Feedback isn't your problem, but your relationship to feedback might be, by Leslie Rahansi. Most leaders believe they're open to feedback, right up until the moment they hear something they don't like. But it's what happens next that reveals our relationship to it. I remember sitting across from a senior leader who told me he was very open to feedback. He wasn't posturing, he meant it. He regularly asked for input, encouraged it, and even thanked people for it. Technically, he was doing all the right things, right up until that critical moment. His peer offered him feedback about a client meeting they attended together. Within seconds of hearing her observations, he stepped in with all the context, a bit of background, a quick clarification, a touch of justification, a hint of over-explaining, even a suggestion that she had misread his intentions. Then a gentle repositioning of what he meant versus what actually happened. It was a lot. He was articulate, calm, and had been completely effective at shutting the whole thing down. His peer didn't argue or push back, and the conversation just wrapped itself up. From his perspective, it was a good exchange. From hers, it wasn't worth pushing any further, or doing in the future. This is where the real issue lies. We each have our own special relationship to feedback, a unique pattern of reactions that show up in the first few seconds after we hear it. That relationship determines whether the conversation opens up or closes down. While we're looking for clear, useful input, our team and colleagues are asking themselves how much of this is actually safe to say. Amy Edmonston's research at Harvard Business School has shown that when people sense even a small interpersonal risk, they adjust by softening their message, rounding off the edges, and removing the parts that might upset or land poorly. The feedback doesn't disappear, but it loses its teeth, and sometimes becomes so neutral and mushy that it's unrecognizable and unusable as a result. There's another layer that shows up before feedback is even given. The way most leaders ask for feedback makes it harder to offer anything useful. Is there anything I can do differently? Sounds generous, but it leaves the other person with too much space and not enough direction. The brain stalls. There's nothing concrete to grab onto. Now compare that to, what's one thing I could do differently in our next client meeting? That question gives the other person somewhere to start. It's specific, focused, and much easier to answer. This small shift can create a big difference. Now layer that with what happens after the feedback lands, because this is where our relationship to feedback shows up in full color. We rarely receive feedback as neutral data. Most often we see it as someone's interpretation of something they saw, say, or do. It brushes up against our identity, competence, and reputation, and it pokes the part of us that wants to be seen as credible and valued and in control. That means we're not just hearing the feedback, we're reacting to what we think it says about us as a person. Our brains are wired to react fast. Research in social neuroscience by Matthew Lieberman at UCLA shows that perceived social threats, including criticism, can activate the same neural pathways as physical pain. Think about that. Our brain interprets both as pain. So the urge to explain, clarify, or straighten the record isn't a personality flaw. It's a hardwired reflex. The issue shows up when we're not aware that the reflex has taken us over. Our teams watch those micro moments closely. They notice how long we stay with a hard comment, whether we get curious or defensive, and whether the conversation opens up or closes down. Over time, they adjust and bring us the version of feedback that keeps things moving, avoids friction, or sounds useful without creating risk. And just like that, our access to deeper insights about ourselves narrows. Meetings still happen, conversations still feel productive, and we still believe we're open to feedback. We just don't realize how much of it never makes it to us. Think about the last time someone offered you feedback. What did you do in the first few seconds after you heard it? Was there something that didn't sit well? Was your instinct to move to resolve it? Did you stay open and curious with it? Did you explain? Did you have the urge to tidy the moment? Or did you let it breathe? These are some common reactions to feedback in the moment. What's yours typically? One leader I worked with ran a simple experiment. Every time he received feedback, he had to ask one more question about their observation. Not a deep dive series of questions that would feel like an interrogation, just one genuine question intended to help him understand what the other person was seeing. At first it felt awkward and slower than his usual pace, and he worried it made him look unsure. What actually happened was different. People started giving more details without being asked, offered examples, and staying in genuine conversation longer. The feedback became sharper and more useful because his stance in the moment had changed. This is where stance matters. In feedback conversations, our job as the receiver is simple, but not easy. Receive the feedback, thank the person for offering it, ask a clarifying question if something isn't clear, and then reflect. Not defend, not explain, reflect. That reflection is where we close blind spots and gaps we can't see on our own. And it's the part most of us skip because it can be uncomfortable. Nothing about the feedback itself had changed. His relationship to it had. We don't need to agree with every piece of feedback we receive, and we don't need to suppress our reactions. We do need to notice them and resist acting on them too quickly. Staying in the moment a little longer and asking a genuine question changes what becomes available to us. It also changes how people experience us, and that ultimately determines whether they will tell us what we need to hear. Your coaching challenge. Think about the last piece of feedback that stayed with you, the one that lingered and felt genuinely uncomfortable. What happened in your head in the first few seconds? Now imagine that moment again, but this time you take on a deliberate stance as the receiver. First, receive it fully. No interruption, no correction, no facial gymnastics. Just take it in without judgment or defense. Second, acknowledge the person. Not just a quick thanks, but a genuine appreciation for both the perspective and the courage it took to offer it. Feedback, especially upwards or sideways, feels risky. When we recognize that, we create the psychological safety for honesty in the future. Third, get curious. Ask one question that helps you understand what they saw, heard, or experienced. Stay out of defending your intent and lean into understanding their reality. For example, can you say a bit more about what you noticed in that moment? Or, what impact did that have on you? Then thank them for their feedback. Lastly, and this is the part most people miss, reflect. Take time after the conversation to sit with it. Consider what might be true, even if it's only partially true. Look for patterns, examples, and evidence of what others might be seeing that you're not. Reflect on these questions. What part of this feedback felt most uncomfortable, and why? What story did I start telling myself about what this means about me? What pieces might be valid here, even if I don't fully agree? Where have I seen a version of this before? If I took this seriously, what would I experiment with doing differently? After your reflection, take some time to close the loop. Let the person know what you took from the conversation and what you're thinking about doing with their feedback. This builds trust and reinforces that their voice matters. Try this once this week. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just try deliberately. That's where the shift starts. If this surfaced a blind spot, or you want to deepen your relationship to feedback, reach out for a free exploratory executive coaching conversation at leslierohansi.com. Have a smooth day.